Hey, yo, guys, we got CJ on the pod today. He is a TikToker, a content creator. He makes a lot of content about Black radicalism, Black liberation. He's super smart, and he's only 18. I mean, it's crazy.
I'm 19. Mm. Yeah, I turned 19 on the 6th of this month. So like I still don't get mad when people say I'm 18. Cause like the last time you talked to me, I may have been. I'm you know,
Oh, for sure. Happy fucking birthday, CJ. You want to introduce yourself super quick?
yo, CJ, I'm a 19-year-old decolonial Marxist. A political educator, public speaker. I do a whole nine. I'm a TikTok content creator. I've been doing TikTok since I was like 14. It really just took off like crazy this since the blackout. It's really been since the blackout. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You're in St. Louis. You guys have been experiencing tornadoes. Wasn't there like a whole scandal where it turned out that like the emergency sirens button wasn't even working?
Oh my god. The thing is, it was because of human error. So that means someone didn't touch it.
Oh,
Somebody either didn't touch it, wasn't there to touch it, or just didn't bother to touch it. I most definitely for real, can we spread conspiracy theories on here?
yeah, you can.
Okay, so what I really think happened with the whole tornado, I think it's government created. I'm gonna tell you why. So in St. Louis, they're building this thing called the NGA, National Geospatial Agency. And this is going to be like basically the mecca. St. Louis is going to be the mecca for geospatial industry for the whole entire country. This is a federal building. Like this is a federal building. So the place that they're building the NGA on is on this old project building called it's project space called Pruitt-Igoe. But they tore down Pruitt-Igoe in like the 70s. If I'm not mistaken, they like blew it up. They tore down the whole project. But the neighborhood remained black. Like it's called JVL now. It remained black. It's
Yeah.
mostly black people there. And basically what happened was when they bought the plot of land for the NGA, the federal government literally displaced so many people. And they actually, like, you can probably look up the story still. They actually moved the lady's house. Like, because the lady's like, "I'm not moving." So, like, they actually got her house, put it on wheels, and then put it on the other side of the street. Swear for God. So what ended up happening was, so the NGA is downtown, and downtown has historically always been black. And basically what's happening is they basically wanna make downtown like, they wanna gentrify it. They wanna make it rich white, like, they want all rich white people to be up there.
Mm.
So, I believe that the government, like, did something like weather control the tornado or something to make it happen, because it literally hit on the north and west sides, which are predominantly black. And a lot of these people, and then after that, they service people with like 10-day eviction, like vacancy. Like they had to vacate their own property within 10 days because the city said it's condemned. And it's also crazy how FEMA is still not down here. FEMA's still not here. They said FEMA won't get here for weeks. By the time FEMA gets here, it won't be anything to do.
And almost
Yeah.
Literally did everything.
and
But I see it's like
you're
the
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, you've seen like the Pruitt-Igoe myth or the documentary?
I haven't seen the documentary. I just know people, literally just know people who live there.
Yeah, yeah. But I you just
But
you reminded me like anyone like listening, you should definitely watch that documentary because it really goes into like how the just like the whole demolition process and how the, surrounding infrastructure and society like failed the community and it was seen like by a lot of like Western academics as a sign like, "Oh, public housing doesn't work." They don't know what to do with the public housing. We gave all this stuff to them, kind of like how they talk about like, the Roma people in Romania, like, "Oh, we gave them all this stuff and they don't know how to take care of it." But it failed because of like the surrounding, infrastructure and various societal forces. And the documentary does a very good job of demonstrating that. So I highly recommend you watch it. But even like the craziest thing is there's no like that's a good illustration too, because all they have to do is wait for some disaster to happen to that community and not do anything.
disaster.
Like, they don't need to create a disaster, they just need to wait. FEMA won't go there. People don't like, the
But my thing is, the reason why I say is government. Tornadoes never hit the city. They never hit the main city. It's because the city's, like, architecture is built.
yeah.
The architecture of the city is built like we have high-rise buildings and stuff. It's built for the wind to never hit the ground. And it's like, if you see a video of how the tornado basically create, it literally just and it's not even like a you know how tornadoes are like cylinder?
Yeah.
Like, they're usually like cylinder. No, it's not a cylinder. It's literally a big ass cloud of just wind and debris that just literally plop right down on the city. Hold up. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off. I'm about to pull it up. I'm like that, you know.
Yeah, that's a huge tornado. Yeah. I mean, but because usually they don't hit cities because the cities usually have a higher temperature, because of all the concrete, and so they go around it. But I don't know. I feel like climate change, yeah, definitely play a role.
Yeah, dude. I'm
Crazy
Things like
could
that.
happen.
And then even
tornado. Yeah, it really felt like Katrina this week. I'm not gonna lie, because like, oh my god, like
absolutely.
y'all don't understand. Like people's like, hold up, like the whole face of people's houses is literally off of their like off of the frame. Like this is the West Side. This is what the West Side looks like right now.
Uh, God.
It big is focus. So like you can see like literally all type of blighted buildings. Hold up, I'm about to actually go. I'm actually about to go because I've been helping out in the community all week. Some people's power are back on. That's another thing. A lot of people were without power for a minute. And then yeah, so it's like it just came out of nowhere. A lot of people were shocked because it's like it's never really happened. And it's also St. Louis has had like some of the craziest weather because during like December and January we had a fat snowstorm. This is my neighborhood. This is the house in my neighborhood. Mm, Like
While you're pulling these up, could you tell us how you became radical?
uh so like the way that I became radical was okay, this is a long ass story. So I was basically 2 and 3 years old, and I remember going to a history. I remember going to a history exhibit and at the history museum because St. Louis has a world renowned for it's called Forest Park. So that's where history, art museum, all this. So it was an exhibit about the transatlantic slave trade, and at the time I never learned about it. Like I'm 2, 3, 4 years old. I never learned about this shit. So I literally went and I was with my family, I was with my mom, brothers, and all that. And I'm seeing the images, and these are the first time I'm seeing images of the ships, slave ships. The people actually packed like sardines on the ship and finally seeing images of all this. So after this, it is literally it continues into a Black history exhibit. So this is the first time I'm seeing like KKK. I'm seeing what the KKK was doing. Like the KKK scared the shit out of me. And then I actually see a robe. So I realized this is real. This isn't like fake. So, and I realized what the KKK was meant for, how they were literally terrorizing, killing, unaliving Black people by the thousands, lynching. Like I'm seeing lynchings and all that. And I remember afterwards, I think because I was scared like for a couple of days after like going there. I remember asking my brother, does the KKK still exist? It's like 2010, 2009, 2010. Like, does the KKK still exist? He's like, yeah. And no, he was like, is your skin still black? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, there goes your answer. And I'm like, wow, like the KKK really still does exist to this day. And then I was also what radicalized me in hindsight about all this is the first time I'm actually coming to grips with how my people got to this continent. Everybody else, everybody else is either indigenous or their people came here on their own accord, like they immigrated from Europe or other places. They came here on their own accord. So I'm like, this is the first time I'm actually seeing like the conditions that they brought Black people in. Fucking, and then I'm talking to my mom about it. She was like, I'm like, what if you had to use the bathroom? You did it right there. What if you had to throw up? You did it right there. What if you're giving birth? You did it right there. Like, what if somebody died? They either threw them off or you wouldn't know they were dead until you dropped off. And you see the person beside you is dead. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll never be able to, even though we have movies about it, we'll never be able to imagine the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade at all. You know what I'm saying? So I'll say it starts with that because you got to realize there are rats, roaches, flies, fleas, all this type of shit on the boat. You're literally sitting in your own defecation and your own feces for months at a time, weeks at a time. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking about women, menstrual cycles. Like you're literally sitting in these unsanitary places for months at a time. And like I remember I'm realizing because they also talked about the ones who jumped ship. And I'm like, that is crazy because these people could very well, probably are. My distant cousin's brother, like, you know what I'm saying? Distant cousins, distant uncles, distant aunts, distant ancestors, like almost everybody, like I guarantee you, if we were actually able to do the research, every African American or descendant of slave will have one ancestor who jumped ship, one or more who jumped ship, because that's just how many people they took from fucking West and Central Africa. So it wasn't until like, and then after that, you know, then I have an interest. I sparked an interest in Black history from there on out because I want to know my story. I want to know the story of my people. So my brothers actually went, me and them went to the same high school. It's like an Afrocentric Catholic high school for Black kids in St. Louis. It's called Conroe. So we went there, and I remember them having a teacher named Mr. Lyons. And the only person I was really introduced to at this time was MLK. Actually, fun story. I told this to Vengeful. Fun story. My dad, we had a cassette tape player in our old van, and my dad burnt. He literally burned the "I Have a Dream" speech A and B side onto cassette tape, and literally I listened to it every day, every morning. And I think this is first grade. So when I get to talk to Mr. Lyons, we talking about Black history. He introduced me to Malcolm X. This is the first time that I'm introduced to a figure outside of like MLK and Rosa Parks. And I'm introduced to a new brand of radicalism than the radicalism that I'm used to. And then I start studying Malcolm X. I start studying his journey. And then I start seeing a pattern. All of these people got assassinated. And at this point, I don't know why, but I noticed everyone gets assassinated, jailed, or exiled. And then so I'm moving along. I'm in like, I'm 8 now. And that's when Michael Brown happens. Michael Brown, for you all that don't know, Michael Brown was an 18-year-old Black man who was killed with his hands up. The officer who killed him was Darren Wilson. So literally,
What year was that?
this 2014. I was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, August 9th, 2014. I remember that day vividly. Because I remember when it happened. I remember when it happened because Ferguson's it's not even like, it's literally not even a doorstep away. It's literally 5 minutes away. I could walk to Ferguson if I wanted to. But what happened was, um, that day we saw Mike got killed by the police, and like a lot of people in St. Louis get killed by the police. That's like, you know what I'm saying. There's just something that happens because we are over policed disproportionately because we're Black. But what made this story crazy was he did have his hands up, and this is right after the Trayvon Martin. So I don't even think Black Lives Matter, like the phrase was being said, but Mike Brown took Black Lives Matter to a whole different fucking atmosphere, like stratosphere. Like this is where, to me, this is where BLM started as a movement. So I remember that day vividly. What made this case so much different is they left Mike's body in the street for like 9 hours. And I remember it was hot as fuck that day. So I'm imagining like his skin probably peeled off because it was like 90, 100 degrees that day. And literally they left him in the street face down. Face down. They left him in the middle of the street for hours. Hours. Didn't cover him up. None of that. They didn't even cover him up.
Do you think they were sending the community sort of a message?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they got they ass. I'm not gonna lie, for the next weeks they got their ass whooped. I'm not gonna lie, like they literally, like I remember it vividly. Like I remember being scared because I really don't know what's happening, but I know what happened to Mike was wrong. I remember being scared by seeing all the rioting because I'm thinking they're coming for me. No, they're going after the state. Like I didn't this is my first time seeing rioting in person. You know what I'm saying? Like going to school, people come back, yeah, we just got this and that because we looted last night. Because you know what I'm saying? A lot of people was looting. A lot of people was I remember it was a quick, yeah, there a quick trip where y'all at?
No, I think it's
I'm
I
on the
don't
other
think
side of the country.
no.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, so like Quick Trip real big in like the Midwest and the South. So like it's a gas station. You can get snack. It's like a convenience store. It's all of that. So literally it was a Quick Trip on West Flores, and I remember seeing the news. They literally blew up the Quick Trip.
Mm.
They looted and then blew it up. I'm like, wow. And then so yeah, so like all of this is going on, and then I got people coming to school. They're coming like, even though I went to school in U City, you had people who lived in the county. You had people like me who lived in North City. So we coming to school, we talking about all this. Um, And then so it's like, yeah, Black lives do matter because I remember the Trayvon Martin verdict 2 years before. I was 6. I remember watching it with my dad and seeing George Zimmerman get off for that shit, and he shouldn't have gotten off. And I'm like, yeah, this is wrong. So this is like, fast forward, this is like, so we had Mike Brown. So I know this is wrong. And then what ended up happening was when they didn't decide to indict him, that's when everything popped off again. That's when I think they burnt the police station. They either burnt it or they tried to set it on fire. I know they was burning police cars. I know like it was active at Ferguson for a minute. And then after that, that's when I forgot which incident it is. I just remember his name was Xavier. It was in Dallas, Texas. This is after Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. Basically what happened was he was like a radical and he sniped like 5 police officers. And I remember I'm like 10 now. This 2016, so I'm 10. I remember telling my dad, like, now they're like looking back, I'm like, this is crazy for a 10-year-old to be saying. But I'm like, yeah, they had it coming.
Yeah.
This is what they get. And I'm like, now I'll say the exact same fucking thing.
Mhm.
But like, I like at this point, I'm like, wow, I was really on the track to become radical for a minute. Like this was a very radical statement for someone to say. Because if you say that in any type of liberal institution, you're gonna get sideways looks. Uh, so
What's crazy about all these cases is like, black people so often have to be like perfect victims. Cause like every time something like this happens, like everybody will come out of the oh, yeah, oh, they, so it's that.
I think it was
It's also like it's very interesting because a lot of people like who are sheltered and like isolated, they'll say like, well, this is like a violent child, but is your exposure to violence, like it was exposure to like the violent reality of what was going on that made you understand this, at such an early age. And yeah, yeah, certainly not something someone at that age should be like ideally thinking about that kind of violence.
so yeah, like when it came to Philando, because Philando is actually from St. Louis.
Mm.
So what ended up happening was they ended up because like you're saying, perfect victim. They ended up releasing uh they ended up releasing information. It was like, yeah, Philando had 30 unpaid speeding tickets. I'm like, what the fuck does that have to do with what just happened? Or like this, they literally did it every time. Like with Mike Brown, like this is why I hate Wesley Bell with every bone in my body. But what happened was, so he was a new prosecutor. He was supposed to prosecute Darren Wilson, but didn't. But what happened was during the original Mike Brown investigation, they withheld evidence on purpose. Like they wanted Mike Brown to look like a thug or a criminal or whatever like that. And they basically said that he robbed the store. He didn't rob the store. Him and the dude that were there, they had an operation going on into where Mike Brown would give him weed, and in return, he'll give him Rillos. So this is why they said that he stole the pack of cigarillos. He didn't steal. It was a side hustle that the person whoever ran the store had going on. And it just and Mike is big, so he's gonna throw his weight around like anybody else would if they feel like they're getting cheated. So what ended up happening was, so yeah, like Philando was from St. Louis. They had like 30 unpaid speeding tickets. They said Mike Brown tried to rob the store with George Floyd. They called him a drug addict. They brought up his criminal record.
Absolutely.
With everyone that's killed by Tamir Rice, he had a gun on him, even though it wasn't a gun. Or they talk about your disciplinary record at school. Cause like Tamir Rice is literally fucking 12.
Yeah.
Like, to like it's literally a rationalization for the violence each and every time to where they try to defame the character of the victim and try to make the cop seem as if they were just in the line of duty and they just messed up. But that's
And
not.
then white school shooters, they get like a very nice like biography and like, they come from a loving family and even if they got like speeding tickets or like any of the shit that they try to pull up against these victims, like they'll BS it. Like, they won't even mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's so
Right.
many white kids that don't get the death penalty that should. Like in a perfect world, if the DP was really doing what it's supposed to do, like Nicola Cruz is supposed to be getting the DP. Why did Marcellus Williams have to get that DP? Because if y'all don't know, Marcellus Williams is also from St. Louis. This is what I'm saying. St. Louis is a very polarizing city for like the political spirit in America, and people don't even realize it. Like a lot of things have either occurred in St. Louis or are connected to St. Louis in one way or another. So that's what I'm saying. Like the BLM movement started here. It started from an incident here. Even though you'll hear people say Ferguson's a suburb, Ferguson. Anybody from Ferguson is not going to say they're from Ferguson. They're going to say they're from St. Louis. But so yeah, like BLM started down here. A lot of the organizers for the early BLM movement are from here. And it's just like historically St. Louis has been like it's been the gateway to the West, and it's been a gateway to just Black culture in general. Like a lot of things that within Black culture wouldn't be the same without St. Louis. Like I don't know if y'all familiar with Ragtime, Scott Joplin. Scott Joplin's house is on Delmar. That's like 10 minutes from my house. But yeah, so like Scott Joplin is literally like he's the founder of Ragtime. Ragtime ended up becoming jazz in New Orleans. Like a lot of like St. Louis's jazz history is also stepped on because New Orleans takes the cake. Dude, like St. Louis and New Orleans are inherently connected cities because we're both French cities.
Uh,
French over.
right. All right. Before this turns into a tourist ad for St. Louis, though, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. But speaking of BLM, BLM had like a very black leftist radical tradition, and it also sort of morphed like the more it went on into sort of like a black liberal tradition. Oh, what do you think the source of this like contradiction is like within the black movement, right? As it became absorbed into the Democratic Party, it also would like at the same time, like, denounce the blockade on Cuba. It would, like, burning cop buildings. Like, it sort of embodies both aspects of black politics.
So what ended up happening, I forgot to tell you about this by my radical journey. Like what happened? Oh, Darren Seals was a political organizer, community organizer, political educator down here. And that's what happened to a lot of the organizers from Ferguson too. They ended up getting killed. They ended up either getting lynched like Danye Jones, they got lynched like him, or they got killed, or they got sent to the prison system. So like Darren Seals, I went to a teach-in by him. I actually went with my older brother, Jaron. And so, yeah, that was one most definitely that was like a black nationalist aspect. I'll say that's like where I started to feed into black nationalism more than anything. So yeah, but you said, what happened with BLM? It got co-opted bad. So like BLM started off as a explicitly black Marxist movement. All three founders of the organization they say they're Marxists and all that. So it explicitly started off as Marxist. What ended up happening was, over time, what happens to radical traditions is once the money starts coming in, once the grassroots money dries up, these places have to find other places to pull from. So, like, corporations are less likely to co-sign onto something if it's explicitly anti-status quo and it's disrupting the status quo. So this causes the institution to start to conform. This is what happened with the NAACP. This is why the NAACP was like released the hostages Hamas. Like, dude. So what ends up happening is because black people do have cultural social capital, they'll use black people to get their liberal agendas across, or a black person.
Could you
So
explain that social capital?
the reason why I believe that like black people have a lot of is because our way blackness itself is a commodity in this country. It's the most prized commodity because black people have always been seen as a commodity and are a commodity in a racial capitalist society, especially in this society, because black people's existence to this society, to this colonial state, is commodification. We were slaves, bought and sold to the highest bidder. So this literally translates into black culture being commodified, but yet demonized at the same time. So I'll say that the reason why they do this, the reason why they use blackface is because black culture has been a driving force behind so many social, it's been the driving force behind social change in this country, cultural revolutions, et cetera, et cetera. When you think of the things that you're consuming on a daily culturally in this country, I bet you 9 times out of 10 is coming from a black person. So this is why they use people like Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, is because, and they specifically use these people because they also have connections to black culture. Like Kamala Harris, for example, is AKA.
Yeah, I think I was going to say too, like, that made me think of something because like when I was probably about 12 when I think like Michael Brown actually radicalized me a lot too because it gave me the sense like I saw a lot of people around me who We're like, saying all the stupid shit about, denying like how horrible it was and all this stuff. And I think at that age, I understood like there's something wrong with society that there's this much resentment, there's this much frustration. Like you can't just rationalize all that away. It's obviously real. People. I think it became clear to me at that age because of that. Um, but I think that also connects to the point about why Black culture or a Native American culture too, Hispanic culture, like anything that's subaltern, anything that's, a marginalized group in America, their culture, their music, their like aesthetics, whatever, becomes very attractive to white people because there's this it makes them feel like, well, we don't actually live in two different societies. We don't actually live in this fake made up world that we've created for ourselves. We actually do have something all in common. We are part of this harmonious society. We both like this music, so we both kind of have had the same, we can relate on this and let's just forget about everything. That really sells to white people, especially suburban white people a lot. Um, and I think that that's like another aspect of it too. It's like this and what makes it cool, makes it feels like real, feels authentic. White music in general, like it's incredibly like not in general, but you take some pop music or like suburban like songwriter music from white people, like it's remarkable how fake and like disconnected from the human experience it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Even when it comes to like white forms of music, I really can't think of any. Um,
It
I
comes to
really
what?
when it comes to like white mute the term white, I really can't think of any because like, yeah,
Rock
like
and
it's
roll.
really
That was
Yeah,
created
there's
by
like
black
grunge
people.
music,
Yeah.
but
I mean, but that rock and roll,
That was rated by black people. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like when you think about the like this is why I get so fucking pissed off when white people try to tell me what is and what isn't country. Like we're black people are the arbitrators of that. You all cannot co-opt our shit and then try to tell us what is not country.
mm,
Country has its roots in blues. It has its roots in field hollers. Country is authentically black, just like hip hop. So it's
it
like,
it's an interesting question too in general, like what makes like people want to create art, like what makes people want to create good art. And that's not a simple conversation, but there is clearly something about marginalization that makes that art more attractive to in groups, people who are like status quo people, because it allows them to conceal. It's kind of like how Elon Musk, pretends to be this nerd and loser and like kind of like, hey, I'm just a stupid kind of guy. It's a way of pretending like, yeah, I'm actually not this powerful person in society. I'm actually just like you. And then it dilutes it over time, and then they go back, to whatever is, you know, popular then.
yeah, like Elon, he came out like this is why like I already knew Elon. I've known Elon has been messed up like since I became a communist. The thing there. But like I remember in like 2014 when like yeah, that's what I'm saying. They framed him as the cool Tony Stark. You know what I'm saying? He about to take us to Mars. I was like, I like astronomy. I want to go to Mars too. And it's like I was talking about this on my live the other day. Like the concept of colonizing Mars is fucking wild to me. Like I believe capitalists are gonna like the only reason why they want to go to Mars is to colonize and to monopolize the resources. Like, do you know how much Mars like minerals will probably sell on Earth? Because it's probably minerals on Mars that we probably don't make here.
There's something so American about it too. Like and it's part of the American mythology, like this colonizing of Mars. Like it's like we're colonizing this empty space and there's all these resources, right? That's the myth that America tells about itself, right? We came to this empty land. And to some extent for American settlers, it was kind of true because diseases had wiped out native communities, European diseases so much that sometimes they would just come upon these like places that have been taken care of by indigenous people for like centuries, and it sort of almost seemed like perfectly man-made for like human living, and it was by Native Americans who like cultivated these places for human living, and so they were like, oh my god, this is an empty god promised land. That's the same thing with fucking Mars all the fucking time.
It's
uh
the same thing with Africa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just all over the world, like Asia, Middle East, like the way that Europeans have treated these places. So Africa, of course, like with the transatlantic slave trade, which I've heard actually people say like it should be called the European slave trade. How do you feel about that?
Um, I really don't. because hold up, I'm typing something to my mom. Hold up.
Mm.
I got you.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say to fill the gap, I was going to say, like, there's also this weird obsession with the idea of a society that's completely self-contained, that's separate from the world, separate from the natural world. You know, the natural world is one thing that capitalism really can never fully control
Mm.
and capture. You go to Mars, it's this promise like, well, we'll figure out a way to run a human society that's completely self-sustaining. You drink the water, you use the bathroom, they purify it, it comes back around. You know, it's like these kinds of egotistical people fantasize about building this microcosm of the society that's their creation, that's but there's no uncertainty, there's nothing outside of it, there's nothing natural about it. And Mars is like a, you know, it's like an opportunity to do that.
yeah. So yeah, like about the European slave trade. Uh, um, I mean, in a perfect ideal world, yeah, but it's the way that white people are able to whitewash history that I don't feel safe with calling it the European slave trade because
Mm.
white people already try to say that white people were slaves too. So if we start calling the European slave trade, I think white people will try to literally co-opt being slaves. Like, cause I've seen it, like you'll see white people be like, the Irish were slaves too. And I remember the first time I encountered the Irish slave myth was on actually TikTok. Like it was a conservatives like the Irish were slaves too. You see, we don't cry about oppression and all of this. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I most definitely still will stick to like transatlantic because it's like you're literally I think this is the first slave trade to really forcibly move that many people over a fucking ocean.
Yeah.
I think it I think it's also like I think it's also meaningful transatlantic because I think it commemorates all the people that we lost on the way here too. Like I said before.
Yeah. Oh, what you described yourself as a black, radical decolonial Marxist. What does that mean to you specifically?
So like decolonial Marxism, all right. So it's basically like it's a framework that was adopted. It's a like a it's I like it because it's not as rigid as other frameworks are. Like I'll say like Marxist Leninism because I used to be a Marxist Leninist. Marxist Leninism. I'm gonna like get into why I'm not a Marxist Leninist anymore. I'm becoming Marxist, but like it's more rigid in like your viewpoint, your world look outlook.
Mhm.
Decolonial Marxism takes upon multiple different schools of thought, and basically I'm able to compile them. So like with decolonial Marxism, I can pull from black radicals such as MLK and Malcolm X because they were fighting for freedom under the conditions of a colonial society. So it's like decolonial Marxism has its roots in Frantz Fanon and Walter Rodney. And what Walter Rodney basically said, uh, Fanon wrote Wretched of the Earth, which is a critique of Marxism itself, and basically says you all need to basically apply Marxism to the material reality of the colonized. Like he's basically saying Marx doesn't do this. Marx couldn't do this. Marx possibly couldn't do this because Marx is in Europe. He's saying that the Marxian tradition needs to evolve, which is true. And then this is when you get Walter Rodney, who then builds upon Frantz Fanon and it's called Decolonial Marxism by Walter Rodney. And this is where I get the title from, Decolonial Marxism. So basically in the book, he's detailing why Marx, Lenin, Stalin, they all fell short is because and why they can't really be used like Marxist Leninism really can't be applicable to a colonial society is because the frameworks for which Lenin and Stalin synthesized these from wouldn't they don't have the lens of the colonized people. It's not coming from the colonized person. It's not coming from an indigenous person. It's not coming from a black person. So this is why in this society we need to listen to the most exploited. We need to listen to the most marginalized. We need to look at their frameworks. We need to look how they and also you have Black Marxism by Cedric Robinson. You need to incorporate the plight of the colonized in your framework in order for it to be serviceable, in order for it to liberate you.
Mm, absolutely.
Do you
Go ahead, Henry.
I was gonna say, do you feel like Mao did that effectively at all? Because you can see him like say?
And no, like when it comes to Mao, I really haven't like read up on Mao. Like I haven't actually read like his little red book. I haven't read Mao, so I'm not gonna talk about like Mao like I know him as much as I know Lenin. and Stalin. You know what I'm saying? But with Mao, I believe with Mao, like that's what Walter Rodney's arguing. Mao he adapted, he built upon Leninism, and he made Marxism adaptable to Chinese society.
Yeah.
So it's like this is what we should do with anything. Like we shouldn't just take it as a as a dogma. We shouldn't just take the dogmatic viewpoint. Like we can acknowledge that these people are the forefathers. Like I got State and Revolution over there.
Yeah.
But we should accept these people as forefathers, but we should also critique them. We should also critique their worldview. We should also build upon their worldview. We should also we're in a constant state of social progression and ideological progression as Marxists, which I believe a lot of Marxists don't get. They believe that we need to just if we just say what Marx says in Das Capital and the Communist Manifesto, everything will be solved. No, that will lead to class reductionism because Marx doesn't have any. You can't go to Marx to find out how to like actual like what black liberation looks like. You can pull from Marx. You can use Marx to basically analyze the society. You can and the relation that the proletarian has with the bourgeoisie, and then you can also you can use it, but you also need to be pulling from black radicals to understand how to liberate black people because the only people that will know how to liberate black people are black.
Well, one thing I will say is that I feel like decolonial Marxism and Marxist-Leninism and Maoism have all sort of like bled into each other and begun borrowing elements from each other. And then of course, like I think you should check out Mao, bro, because like he and Fanon came to like really similar conclusions. I feel like, especially like in terms of the decolonial aspects and how to decolonize. Henry, what were you gonna say?
Like a lot of what he says in A Dying Colonialism, Fanon, like it's so similar to a lot of the stuff Mao talked about in terms of like using the like how Fanon viewed like the way that Algerians used their like culture, their like traditions and like turned it into like a revolutionary kind of consciousness that was nationalist, but not like a form of bourgeois nationalism is very similar to like a lot of the stuff, especially in
Yeah,
in,
like
these middle like during the Civil War period. We had like these similar conclusions in terms of like incorporating like various trends in the society.
yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like when because I was also reading Malcolm X, and he was actually talking about he was basically talking about why like he was basically critiquing the USSR.
Yeah.
Uh, and he's like, I'm going to just read it. He said, "When you want a nation, that's called nationalism. When a white man became involved in a revolution in his country against England, what was it for? He wanted this land so he could set up another white nation. That's white nationalism. The French Revolution was white nationalism. The Russian Revolution, yes, it was white nationalism. You don't think so? Why do you think Khrushchev and Mao can't get their heads together? White nationalism. All the revolutions that are going on in Asia and Africa today are based on what? Black nationalism. A revolutionary is a black nationalist. He wants a nation. If you're afraid of black nationalism, you're afraid of revolution. And if you love revolution, you love black nationalism." So basically, what Malcolm is saying is, regardless of Khrushchev or our Russian comrades, in any way, even though they're communists, they're going to still censor their whiteness because they don't have the framework, they don't have the lens to not do that.
Absolutely. Right.
So
Yeah, Malcolm X, I've always found sort of fascinating. Like MLK was very easily co-opted by liberal frameworks. Well, why do you think that wasn't able to be done with Malcolm X? And why do you think like so many radical black figures they get like washed by the system and turn into like harmless icons?
oh my God, I was just watching a video about this. But you can't do that with Malcolm because Malcolm's a Muslim. Malcolm's forever in his life is Muslim. And B, Malcolm's more famous moments are explicitly more like bite back at the system. MLK has his bite back at the system. Like he still has that. He's still him and Malcolm X pre self-defense, personal self-defense. Like they're way more similar than different. I think they're purposely by the liberal institutions propped up as oppositional frameworks. MLK is he's the social justice advocate that you want to be, even though he was anti-capitalist, he was anti-imperialist, he was anti-militaristic, he was anti-empire. But and it's like MLK has those one-liners that Republicans and liberals can twist to their worldview and they can gaslight you with it. For example, treat me by the content of my character and not by the color of my skin. This is Republicans will use this. They'll drive it home in the ground to roll back civil rights legislation. You get what I'm saying? So it's like the reason why they do this is because they can basically liberalize these people and make them acceptable by the white general public
Yeah.
as people who are okay with the status quo being as it was. But they did the social change that they did advocate for was good and they were liberal. You get what I'm saying? Like they're going to say, yeah, this is what liberalism does. We can change the world just under the context of liberalism. Like they'll never tell you about the workers' strike. They'll never tell you about this and that from MLK because they only want you to see MLK working from within the system. Like when I found out that MLK got arrested, I was like, what the fuck? Like I'm like, how? Like the way that the criminal justice system and the carceral system is framed when you're a kid is only the bad people get arrested. So why was MLK getting arrested multiple times for doing disruptions? Now I know. But yeah, they're never going to teach you about MLK getting arrested. I swear to you.
It also feels like, both Malcolm X and MLK are necessary. The portrayals of them are necessary because you have Malcolm X who was too mean, he was too, I think, I
Rowdy,
guess,
he was too violent. They frame him as
yeah, he was too reactionary in a way. Like from the liberal perspective, he was like, well, he was so reactionary to white supremacy. He basically became a white supremacist in his own way, whereas MLK was a humanist, and was a Christian, and you see the same thing happen with Nelson Mandela too, which is a little bit baffling because that happened so quickly. I mean, really anyone.
he got took off the terrorist list like in 2008.
Yeah, exactly. So, but
And it's like it was literally doing guerrilla warfare.
yeah,
I forgot the South African Communist Party. It literally was just in my head. But yeah, so like he was literally doing guerrilla warfare. He was literally fucking the national party up in South Africa, like doing radical Marxist communist stuff. And that's what I'm saying. Like with MLK, they're never going to tell you about they're never going to show you his autobiography where on the first page he literally says, I've been an anti-capitalist since I was born because I was born during the Depression and I saw how bad capitalism was. Like he said that he basically saw how like capitalism in its rawest forms and its rawest expressions during the Great Depression. And you know what I'm saying? This is what MLK said himself from his own mouth, but they'll never tell you that.
Mm.
and also like the I mean, and I think, like, I would say I'm a humanist, and I think that humanism in general is good, right? But they seize on any, like, example of humanism, any example of Nelson Mandela or MLK, like, talking about, and anything, in terms of just, like, even the "I have a dream" speech, anything that's palatable, that's like, "Well, that's pretty nice." They seize upon that and characterize them in that way. Whereas, Malcolm X, and especially in his later years, I feel like Malcolm X, he underwent such a, like, ideological progression and transformation over his lifetime. They always portray him at his most abrasive, in his most abrasive, most militant, rhetorical period, and don't really highlight the a lot of things that he said that were pretty humanist, that were similar to a lot of stuff MLK said too. So there's like a choice, like, well, we have to have the two brothers, one who went the wrong way, went down the wrong path, became violent, etc. The other who became loving, who thanked the world for its curses, that it placed upon him, and so on. It's kind of
Be peaceful people. They show him as a pacifist. I wouldn't consider MLK a pacifist by whatsoever because, like, he saw the utility of violence in his activism. He would intentionally put he'll intentionally put people my age on the front lines because he knew that's how you basically like, and that's kind of what's going on with Zionism. That's basically how you win the moral argument against the colonizer, and that's how you're able to galvanize so many people to your cause because you showed them that the oppressor has no moral compass. This is why Kwame Ture says, "How are you going to get your moral compass from the colonizer when he's the most vile person to ever exist? He's the most vile person to ever like you know what I'm saying? His version of violence is inconceivable to the colonized. So yeah, it benefits the system to paint MLK because also they can come out and find him every MLK day. Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll see like Trump or something like fucking
See?
tweeting out like MLK would have loved me or some shit like that. Like
Yeah, that's
MLK
all.
would have been against anti-white racism. I think it's so stupid the way they portray Malcolm as the same as like a white supremacist or black power is the same as white supremacy. But I think within like the liberal mindset, especially when they're unable to do like a class analysis or like a historical materialist analysis, like they just see like, oh, action equals action, and it's just sort of equal on an equal footing in their heads, like it exists in a vacuum. And in my opinion, it's completely ridiculous, like in every single
This
way.
is why this is why I dislike I dislike the term black supremacy. I dislike the term black washing. It's because white supremacy is something that has systemic, cultural, and social ramifications and implications that black people just will never have access to.
Mm.
So like when people are like, yeah, Malcolm X was a black supremacist. Just because you believe black people are superior to everybody, that does not make you a black supremacist. White suprem like it isn't it makes it seem like white supremacy is something that is just individualistic. And that's another thing that the status quo has been able to do. It's been able to distance itself from what conventionally is seen as white supremacy. The only type of white supremacists that we see conventionally are Klan members and neo-Nazis. And the status quo, no, we don't like Nazis. We don't like Nazis. We don't like, even though the status quo during 1940s was actively funding Nazis, but Nazis are seen as the people that are too far. The Marxists and the communists are seen the people that are too far left, and the liberal, we're just right. We hold elections. We're fair. We're just. We may have some fuck ups, but you know, that's all past. And it's like the way that they frame history is intentional. Like they'll never they'll teach you that 1940. This is why I say white privilege and just white blindness is so apparent. It's so ingrained into our society. If you ask white people, average white person, when was the golden time to be American, they'll tell you the 50s and the 40s. For black people, that shit was a living hell. So this is what I'm saying. Like the American identity, the American dream, the concept of America was never made for the black person.
Yeah. Could I've also seen like a resurgence of sort of black conservatism. Do you think like that's real? Is it overhyped? Like especially like a leaning towards like Trumpism. Is that just a failure of the Democratic Party in terms of addressing black issues? So like people are all like, oh well, the Republicans must be right then.
Yeah, that's a major part. It's most definitely a major part. It's just a failure from the Democrats.
Hmm.
But people, I think it's also overhyped. The black community will never turn Republican.
Yeah.
Like it just never will. Um, but you are gonna have your ignorant people who are pro Trump. Like I believe the levels of black Republicans, like actual black Republicans, will stay under 10% forever.
Okay. Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's never going to be a big group whatsoever. Because of the material conditions of black people themselves, I think it's very impossible to even back sort of
Yeah.
conservative policy. But black people for decades now have been a stronghold of the Democratic Party. And now I think there's such a discourse over whether liberalism or black liberalism versus black leftism or radical thought. How do you feel about this conversation? Like, does the Democratic Party serve the community whatsoever? Did it ever serve black people? Like, oh, what? How do you part
So
this?
this is what I'm saying. So the Democratic establishment, the liberal establishment has never did anything on its own accord for black people. The only way that they were able to do it, the only reason why they passed things like the Civil Rights Act, you know what I'm saying? It's because black people was giving them the belt. So this is what I'm saying. They were putting social pressure and physical pressure. The only way to make the status quo change is by damaging private property. It's by damaging private assets. There were more riots during the civil rights movement than there were during BLM. So the only way that you're going to get the status quo to do shit is by doing radical shit. Is by disruptions. Is by hurting them in their pockets. This is why during BLM, the first thing that you'll hear conservatives say is they burned all the fucking buildings. Okay, someone just died. I don't give a fuck. Like y'all got insurance for that shit. Like stop playing with me. So when it comes to black liberalism, it's because the Democratic Party has been able to recuperate these radical changes into their base and say, yeah, this is what we did for you. So now, Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'll have those N-words voting for me for the next 40, 50 years. It's a political strategy. If you're framing it as, no, you didn't put social pressure on us to do to your civil rights legislation. We did. And then, so, you know what I'm saying? It's a cycle.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you have people who don't have a radical outlook and they only hear these liberal news cycles, this is what they're gonna believe. "Oh, yeah, the Democrats gave us this, the Democrats gave us that, the Democrats gave us this." No. Leftist, radical, Marxist, anarchist did.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Like one of the most like egregious examples of that sort of thing I always thought was the abolition of slavery, because there was so much like organization and pressure and like a demonstration to the Northern Republican Party, like that it just was not going to be a tenable organization any longer, and the people were going to keep revolting, and they weren't going to stand for it. And now, like, in school, so often it's just like, well, they were just sort of these passive victims and didn't really do anything until Abraham Lincoln came along and took pity on them. And it's really, that in particular is obscene, because I feel like at least with the Civil Rights Act, there is some idea that, like, well, there was a march on Washington, and there were, there were people that did things in the face of adversity who, made these achievements, even if it doesn't emphasize them properly, like, there's still some agency, but that really, I think, always, to me, made a lot of, like, just, like, maybe more conservative or more, like, conspiratorial, views, like, especially, um I saw it or like ahistorical, like, narratives about, Black people and, African people, because it's like this story that is told through the education system is one of, like, victimhood and no agency whatsoever. So of course, that's a horrible thing to hear, and it's infantilizing.
I
Mhm.
mean, there were so many slave revolts, like, and they're never told. They're never told. And, you got Nat Turner, you got fucking John Brown, who, like, he's not black, but, like, you had to go do all this violence to even move the party. I think it's very similar to what you're saying about civil rights. Like, the institutions of liberalism, they don't give rights just because they feel like it. They have to be forced, like, forced. Their hands have to be forced to give that. Um, one thing I find really sad is, like, the greatest, like, in my opinion, one of the greatest political organizations in America, the Black Panther Party, it's sort of been MLK'd in a way. Like, I used to teach lessons in, Oakland for students. I was sort of like a co-teacher or teacher's aide, at a very shitty school district, so, like, I was working multiple jobs at the school. And we weren't allowed to, like, talk about the Marxism of the Black Panther Party. We weren't allowed to talk about, the radical thoughts. All we were able to say, and Oakland people in Oakland love the Black Panther Party because that's where, a lot of it started. They have, like, such a deep love for it, but, like, all we were really allowed to say was like, "Oh, they fought for equal rights," right? And for the students, the young students who are listening to this, it was boring to them. Like, we made the Black Panther Party, which should be the most exciting thing on earth, like, the institutions of the education system in Oakland, they've turned them into just these boring historical figures, that, like, they don't even care about. That doesn't even inspire the youth.
Yeah, like, so I wanted to actually touch on, I actually wanted to touch on, you were talking about slavery. Moses Dickinson, I don't know if you all ever heard of this. He created a secret all black militant organization, in St. Louis. It was called the Knights of Liberty. And they literally were 42,000 strong and they were on go. But Moses, at the last time, Moses basically caught them off and was like, I feel something else was coming. And then the Civil War literally happened a few years later.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, like, just things like that. There were just so many violent resistance. And, I think, like, liberal history, it really wants to, like, just give it all to Lincoln, right? Like, Abraham Lincoln just came. It's that great man of history shit, and if you actually study it, like, Lincoln didn't actually want to free the slaves. It was forced by it.
Yeah.
And even the laws he enacted, they allowed slavery in some of the states that were part of the Union. right? Like that
Yeah,
was
really, they allowed slavery in Missouri.
yeah. So I don't know. It's just
It's a thing of where, like, they're not gonna teach you that Lincoln did it to basically sever the South's capitalist infrastructure. Like, they're never gonna tell you that. That's the only reason why he did the Emancipation. And the Emancipation Proclamation didn't really free it only freed, like, 20 it was only, like, 20,000 slaves that were freed because a lot of masters didn't adhere to the shit. So a lot of slaves a lot of people were enslaved after the Emancipation, after the 13th Amendment. After a whole lot like, slavery didn't end until the 1960s.
I think to some extent the reason that America suppresses black people so much is that it's almost embarrassing to the story America tells about itself, right? Within its propaganda.
Yeah,
Every time a society has a propaganda about itself and a group that sort of subverts that propaganda, right? So America, like, we're this land of the free, we believe in equality of all men. And then you have this group that's historically been disenfranchised, enslaved, and it just stands its existence stands against everything that you tell about yourself and about America. You want to suppress it. You want to not allow it to exist because it threatens the legitimacy of your institution. I mean, I think that is such a big part. Of course, there's like base economic reasons, there's like reasons to divide the working class. But I think that is such a part of it. Like black people represent everything against what America tells itself.
Yeah, and it reminds me, like, one of the, like, craziest anecdotes is there was a plan, in Nazi Germany after the end of the Holocaust, after every single Jewish person was exterminated, they wanted to build the largest museum of Jewish history and culture in the world. And I think there's something very, similar about that too, because especially when you think about indigenous people and the role they play in the United States, which is similar in what it reminds people, you know? Indigenous people, are a smaller population, a less visible population, and you don't see you see this view of like, well, it's a museum piece, it's a, artifact of history. It's like, it was bound, this culture, this society, this language, so on and so forth, was bound to disappear because of the, way history unfolded. And because of that, like, conviction, there's this strong dislike of the existence of indigenous, and black people, because, they represent the reality that's nonsense.
and then it's like indigenous people are more hidden than black people because they're shipped off to reservations, and a lot of people don't know understand, like, what really goes on these reservations because growing up, the way that history is taught, the indigenous people to this land are taught as if they never existed. Like, they not even no, they existed, but they don't exist anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
The indigenous people to this land don't exist anymore. We're the American. This is what it means to be American. That, like, we're you and me, we're the Americans, the indigenous people, the people who are from here and have been here for thousands, tens and hundreds of thousands of years. They don't exist anymore. So now we have to just basically include everybody into the American identity. And then it's like with black people, we've been purposely left out the narrative and then just like okayed back in, if that makes sense. So like
Yeah.
when you will say, well, the Declaration of Independence wasn't for us. Well, now it is. You know what I'm saying? When it was written,
Yeah, yeah.
when it was written, it didn't include us. It didn't include us. It didn't include black people. We were slaves. So how are we gonna say that you want equal rights and liberties? Like, it's like slavery is literally just okay. Like Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. Okay, that doesn't mean that he's some terrible person. He's a very nuanced person. He had things, but he didn't like slavery, but he owned slaves. But you can tell, but he thought it was evil. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he would.
George Washington, he was still he's you still have to revere him. He's the founder of this country. No, I don't. The fuck? Like, I
I
don't. I really don't. I remember I was in 11th grade and my teacher was like, "Yeah, we're gonna talk about our great American heroes. Like, what do you think is so heroic about them?" I'm like, like, I literally raised I'm like, "Nothing. These are not heroes. These are genociders, rapists, and slave masters." So she was like, "You don't think there's anything redeemable about these people?" I'm like, "No." She was like, "So you don't think there's anything heroic?" I'm like, "Fuck no." Like, if it's like literally like liberalism has allowed itself to distance itself from people like Hitler. You all did the same shit as Hitler on a larger scale and continuously do it, but to you all, it's normal, it's normalized, the violence is normalized, is because it's normalized is because this country subconsciously or consciously knows that it's gonna be need the death of Black and Indigenous people for it to function and for the colonial order to be maintained.
Can you
But when
believe
it happens
people
outside the borders of it, it's like, "Whoa, that's some bad shit," but it's not.
can you believe people get married at plantations? Like, that is
Yes,
insane. I just learned
isn't
about
that
this.
yeah, it's normal. Like plantations is a lot of people grew up on plantations.
Oh.
Like a lot of my like, you know what I'm saying? A lot of my dad's like friends from Marcus, a lot of them grew up on this is what I'm saying. Slavery didn't end to the 60s for a lot of Black people. Like I'm dead ass serious. Like people were still on slave plantations. It's because you got to realize a lot of these plantations are in highly rural areas and you can't leave because they have you in debt. They have your family in debt traps. That's what they did after slavery was quote unquote abolished. They trapped people in peonage and they trapped people in debt contracts. So basically what happened was the slave master now was like, okay, I don't own you anymore, but I can legally own your ass with fucking I can make you sign this contract and you'll basically be in debt to me until you die. And then your kids will be in debt to me till they die because his debt is now inherited to them. You know what I'm saying? So it's like literally they found new ways to do it. And this is why it wasn't until like the 60s/70s where a lot of these got resolved. So a lot of people like Rosa Parks grew up on slave plantations. Like she grew up as a sharecropper. A lot of people within Black history literally grew up in on plantations, and Rosa Parks died the year before I was born.
Mm. I think one of the things that liberals do is like there's two kinds of ways that liberals sort of do identity reductionism, right? It could
Mhm.
either be like a Charlie Kirk kind of like conservative Republican kind, where it's like, oh, you know, racism doesn't exist, and you know, in fact, the only racism right now, hey, we're all equal. We became an equal society after 1964, and we're in a utopia. And in fact, the only racism that exists is white racism, like racism against white people. And then there's also like Democrat type liberals who will try to like say that we're making progress through putting like black faces in like high places, right? Like the CEOs or like our Green, right? Our UN representative Green. I forget her first name.
Darlene Green.
Carlene Green. She
Darlene.
Garland. She was literally voting in to kill like Palestinian children multiple times, like multiple times voting against ceasefires, you know, just like murdering hundreds of thousands, if not like I believe at this point the Palestinian death toll might even be a million. Like they've sort of let that through, accidentally slipped at Trump. And somehow this was like supposed to be liberation, like that she's like a black UN representative, and that's how the Biden administration represented it. Like that's how it was advertised. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's like two kinds of identity reductionism that are both awful in their own way.
Yeah, like with them, they'll literally just use it. They'll use a black face to absolve themselves. They'll be like, because of how racism and white supremacy is framed in this society, they can wash their hands of it now because it's not us doing it. It's not obviously it's not white supremacy. We have Black people here too. We have Black people doing the shit for us. So it's not white supremacy.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, Adolf Reed, but, he said something really interesting, a while ago, where he pointed out that basically this sort of like liberal anti-racism could eventually serve the same purpose originally as white supremacy did because it naturalizes hierarchy in a similar way, you know, like the view of like, well, there's this like poor working class of like racist white people that are like, you know, hillbillies, rednecks, whatever, and like, you know, black people and Hispanic people that are just lazier. And then, well, you can see the bourgeoisie, you know, we're, you know, multiracial, we're, you know, we're we come from all different backgrounds. It's not just white, you know. So this just shows we're enlightened, you know, we know more, we're, you know, we're not racist and bigoted like all of you guys. Um, and it, you know, you kind of create this new like naturalization of hierarchy, you know, and this new kind of like, well, this of course this is the way it should be. Because there's no focus on materialism. There's no focus on like what are the property relations, you know, what are the social relations, like really reinforcing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's totally superficial.
Yeah, like, that's what I say, yeah, like, when it comes to that, like, liberalism is also able to basically say because liberalism also does a historical revisionism in which it says history stops with us. So it's like, okay, we have these things now. This is how it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be no more societal progression, you guys. There's no socialism. The only thing that we have is capitalist realism. That's the term. It's capitalist realism. It's basically like capitalism is the end of history, and we've reached the pinnacle of human society, and this is the only way that stuff should stand. So if you all go too far, you're gonna end up in a dictatorship.
Mm.
And it's so
Yeah.
they portray it so scary, and it really, I think our current system is really the scary one. CJ, you sort of touched on this before, but I sort of want to bring it a little bit back to that. You were talking about how orthodox Marxism can't really address black issues. You know, I've heard some people, especially this was addressed in Black Marxism, that book, that black people are sort of you can't really have like the proletarian bourgeois analysis. They're sort of like almost like a sub proletariat. Do you sort of, and how they're treated under capitalism. Do you sort of agree with that, or would you
Yeah,
say?
you need a I most definitely I think they're the black proletariat and the white proletariat because okay, so I got this from black anarchism. That's another thing. Like I can adopt anarchist frameworks into my work. So basically what they basically were saying was that racism is a lie that the white capitalist bourgeoisie uses to basically create class division. It is something that is parroted to the white proletariat as something that like basically if you want to retain your privilege, you have to make sure that their rights never subsume yours. You have to make sure that they have no rights to pull from because if they have rights, your existence is in danger. Even though your existence is really in danger because of the white bourgeoisie. So that's what I'm saying. The white bourgeois, even like the white bourgeoisie, even though they're both white, with the white proletariat, they still have something to gain from the subjugation of other white people. You know what I'm saying? This is why I say white people need to be liberated too. But basically, what I see is like the black proletarian would inherently need a different analysis because the black proletariat started off as capital in the first place. Like no other group of people was capital itself. The essence of capital is us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, slavery and capitalism have such a deep connection. Especially like even things like as innocent seeming as, say, let's say the Industrial Revolution, that was funded by capital got in Britain through the slave trade, through the transatlantic slave trade.
Mhm.
I mean, there's this great book called Capitalism and Slavery. And, he draws a direct line between the funds that they got from the transatlantic slave trade toward the building up of British capital into investment into the Industrial Revolution. I mean, capitalism is inextricably tied to black slavery. And then, of course, Marx himself, and I know that Marx wasn't able to fully address this, but he did say that like plantations operated like their own mini little exploiters of capital, right? The plantation owners.
Uh-huh.
So I think the story of capitalism and black subjugation is just inextricably tied. Where you can't exactly rely on a simple proletariat bourgeois analysis as so many communists want to do, like to simplify.
Mhm. Yeah, this is why, like, people like, Marx put pressure on Lincoln to, like, basically, like, adopt a framework to end slavery, like, Marx and Lincoln were pen pals.
Well, yeah, but Lincoln never wrote back. It was kinda sad. He just wrote because he was like, "I think you're cool that you, like, wanna, defeat the South or whatever," and Lincoln just never wrote anything back.
Yeah, yeah. It was very
Yes, man.
he got
He
let go
goes
red.
Yeah, he got
But I
ghosted.
will say, like, the area where I feel strongly in that respect is that the material reality does produce the social categories. Like, you can see throughout the history of the transatlantic slave trade, the white supremacist ideas of race in terms of white and black people, which did not exist at the beginning of it, but by the end are very visible. And there's a whole host of like pseudoscience and rationalizations about different categories of people. But it emerged like out of a need to rationalize this real, like, state of things, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, of course. I mean, you can't ignore like a base motivation. I mean, even the invention of race. I mean, it makes no sense. It's just all right. Like these are just okay. First of all, the most diverse continent on Earth is Africa, right? So like, there's no genetic race, right?
Mhm.
And everybody else on Earth who's like outside of Africa, we're like a bottleneck population, sort of. You can see in our genetics. But for example, like race will somehow say that like the Seminolese people who have like blacker features due to like the environment they live in are the exact same race as people in Africa, but you do studies of them, genetic studies of them. The people of Seminole Island, their closest living relatives are the Ainu people of Japan, and the Ainu people are these like very light skinned, very European featured people. And so I don't know, is and we're still operating under this framework anyways. I mean, it makes no sense. um
Well, I mean, even black people in America, a lot of us have more like, if you were to trace our genome, we have more in common with white people, like, with white Americans than we would with some people on the continent of Africa that are not from West and Central Africa, of course.
would that be
Yeah, even, like, it's crazy, like a majority of human, like, genetic diversity is just in, like, East Africa, and just gets, like, more and more homogenous, like, the farther away you get from there, because like,
Yeah, it's
people
East and West Africa.
yeah. But it is important and, like, easy to forget that because we live in a world where race is so real and socialized and reinforced in so many ways, it is it is very easy to forget that when the transatlantic slave trade first started, when Europeans were going to Africa in the 1600s, it was not they did not look at everyone in Europe as one group of people, and they did not look at everyone in West Africa as one group of people, not even close. And it was only after hundreds of years that they isolated like specific features to be like, yeah, oh, it turns out they are different, you know. It's very easy to forget that.
mm. One thing I've always found interesting is the difference between like Spanish or like Iberian colonialism and like British colonialism because like one, I mean like Anglo colonialism was like very based on like an in-group out-group. Spanish colonialism was based on like yeah, they are lesser than us, but we will intermix, but they have to adopt our culture. We're going to erase their culture. It's this weird um different dichotomy, right? And in the new world, like especially when like New España, when the Spanish are setting up their empire, they created these like absolutely insane. You can search up these pictures, absolutely insane hierarchies of people, right? And at the bottom were obviously like Afros and indigenous people, but you got like the mulattoes and you got like the people who are mixed, like white family and indigenous, and then black and indigenous, and then black and white, and then indigenous and white. And you can search up these paintings. They're absolutely insane in how they created this like system that's so complicated, so hard to get your mind around. And yet, to them, it became very real, like very quickly.
Yeah, the French did the same exact thing, because like, I'm Creole. So, like, the French they have terms for if you're 1/8 black, 1/4 black, 1/16 black, like, you're a whole different racial categorization. I'll say that the European one, the not European, the British one is way more rigid, in what you will see. This is why a lot of people get so confused about the concept of race and how it operates in different contexts around the world. Like, when Tyler came to America and said she was colored, not black, people didn't understand that. But I fully understand what Tyler is saying. Like, growing up, Tyler wasn't considered black in South Africa. She's biracial. Biracial is his own racial category in South Africa. But here, biracial people are black.
I mean, it's always a debate, isn't it? Because like it's how they present, right?
Yeah, but in like South Africa, it's like a whole
It
like it
depends
is
it
different.
depends on presentation. It depends on when you talk about America, okay, this is what I'm saying, race is freaking confusing. So when it comes to America, the history of what it means to be black has always been in a relation to the needs of capital and, like, the political needs of the state. So, like, when it comes to what it meant to be black, like, this is what Sinners thought me and Poke was talking about the Sinners. Like, what it mean like, Mary in today's society would not be considered black, but back then she was. She's functionally a white passing black woman in that film, throughout that whole entire film. So it's like now, like biracial people, like when it comes to like biracial people, like Drake's black, Obama's black, J. Cole's black. But you do have white presenting people, like you do have Halsey. So like you wouldn't say that she's racially black, but culturally, if Halsey's tapped in with like her, like I forgot which parents black, but you know what I'm saying, if she's culturally in tune with herself, she could be, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
she could be African American, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
of course. Zendaya too. I mean, she's biracial, and then yeah. I mean, it's racist. Like it's so illogical, and yet it's so real in many tangible ways, like the effects of it. Um, our black population within America, they have the worst statistical outcomes in terms of health, in terms of just like every single basic living indicator. The system is just built to fail them. Do you think, a lot of people argue that anti-blackness is sort of the basis of oppression all over the world. Do you think that's true to any extent?
Yeah. I believe that like so like when we're talking about like colonization, when we're talking about anti-blackness, we have to realize everything in this society or in this world, your oppression is built on your proximity to blackness.
Mm,
This is why Indians during British colonization were called the N-word. It's based off of proximity to blackness. Your skin, the darker your skin is throughout history, the more explicit forms of hate and violence that you saw. So this is what I'm saying. So like this is another framework, Afro-pessimism, like the idea, the way that oppression works is inherently different from black people because black people, our trauma, our death, our genocide doesn't look like other people's genocides, if that makes sense. Like, this is why I hate the argument that Zionists always use, even though it's false. Well, how can we be genociding Palestinians if their population is going up? Black people are being genocided, have been being genocided. It just is slow and it needs to be repeated over and over and over again because black trauma porn, this country has never known a day without black trauma. Constantly showing images of black bodies being murdered, constantly killing black people, constantly, you know what I'm saying, doing everything under the sun to black people. And it's black subjugation, black death is a necessity for the society to run. Um, so yeah, I most definitely believe like when it comes to like things like colonization, like the subjugation of black people, like the subjugation, annihilation and genocide of indigenous people is inherently different from black people in the fact that the 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 subjugation and the clearance of indigenous people, they were getting a commodity. The colonizer was getting a commodity that was exterior from the indigenous person, if that makes sense. It was to uphold the colonial order.
yeah.
So what the colonizer did to indigenous people, like, it's fucking terrible. Like, still terrible. It's just different. So it was to uphold the colonial order. They stripped indigenous people of their lands. Black Americans really don't have anything that, like, we don't have any land that you can really strip from us, if that makes sense. Like, African American, we don't. So it's like this cycle of black death is literally just for fucking entertainment at this point. It's literally just for white entertainment at this point because it's always been about that. Because if you all, I don't know if you all know, like, lynchings were social gatherings, social events. Thousands of white people will come to see black people literally get hung from trees. Black people were castrated. Black people were black they used to castrate us. They used to literally send, like, Nat Turner's genitals were literally they either ate them or sent them in the mail. I know sometimes they would send like genitals in the mail as like souvenirs from lynchings. Like they'll
Mm.
literally send it to postcards. Or like black people's heads will be put on pikes for the whole, like, for like a week or two after the lynching, they would cut our heads off. Or they'll do things like they will also, like, what I'm saying, body parts. Like, I know not Malcolm X. Nat Turner's body parts were sent across the country. I know that's for sure. That's why they only have a skull left. You know what I'm saying? After this, they used to literally barbecue black people. They used to set people on fire. Like, this was something that they did. So this is what I'm saying. I was actually having a convo in Colodo's comment section about this, like, because Colodo made a video about the colonizer. I don't give a fuck about giving the colonizer his humanity. And basically, I was like, yeah. The colonizer inherently strips himself from humanity when he becomes the colonizer because it's a thing of where they have to subjugate, they have to strip another one of their humanity, which makes them themselves not human. And it's like these social gatherings, these lynchings, these displays of black trauma, black hurt, black pain, they started to be associated with serotonin, dopamine, and all other type of feel good chemicals in the brain. So they literally, you build an addiction to it. You build an addiction to it. So now this is a weekly occurrence. Y'all just finding a random black person making up a reason, making up a justification. Oh, he did this to this white woman. He did this. He did that. Literally making up justifications to feel justified because you know deep down this shit is wrong. But you built up a addiction to just killing niggas to where you do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. Um, w- One trend, I've sort of noticed is like Democrats trying to the Democratic Party and institution trying to drive a wedge between the black community and like the Palestinian community or like the Hispanic community. Who was that one politician? She said something like, "We're not going back to picking fruit" or something like that, and
She was saying going back
like
to Sydney Crum.
what was her name?
Yeah. Jasmine Cracker, she was like, "We're not going back to pick on."
Yeah, yeah, in relation to, like, Hispanic labor, like, what she was basically saying is, like, "Let's have the Hispanic labor do it for us." Um, why do you think, like, it's so important for them to, break, like, this solidarity that Black people historically have had with, like, all these groups? Is it some kind of plan? Is it just accidental? Like, why is it so important?
It's to build class division, and it's to build isolation. Isolation is advantageous to the oppressor because as long as you can isolate the masses from gathering and organizing, this is why Malcolm X says we're not outnumbered, we're out organized. Like they'll take very will like black liberals on the app. They'll take very real truths and overrepresent it and make these people and monolize these people and make them seem like they're just as the same as white people, for example. So like with like Palestinians are anti-black. Does the Palestinian community have a problem with anti-blackness? Yes. Every community does. Why? Because of white supremacy and colonialism. You know what I'm saying? So like the Democrats will literally just stop right there. They wouldn't say all of that. They'll stop right there and they'll say, "Oh, so and so group has anti-blackness." So this is why we can't with them. This is why we should never try to, you know what I'm saying, build any type of community or coalition because they don't recognize like the way that racism is framed is so A and B of I hate you, I hate this. Anti-blackness isn't just explicit hate. It's literally the subconscious and conscious actions that we do every day to uphold this system. Everyone has some sort of anti-blackness attached to them, even my damn self. So it's like,
Mm.
that's what makes it insidious. Does that make it okay? No. But we should realize that anti-blackness should never prevent us from wanting to fight for liberation. So it's like, yeah, like it's most definitely it's advantageous for the colonizer to make isolationism seem radical, if you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So if we as black people, okay, we're tired of being fucking oppressed, we're tired of being beat up on for centuries, so we just gonna isolate ourselves. Oh, that sounds like a good idea on the surface, but once you actually get to it, you're not liberating yourself.
Yeah, it's also just not possible, like,
Yeah.
to just separate from society, like, unfortunately.
Uh, yeah, it almost sort of becomes like a form of escapism, I find, like, not wanting to confront real issues within society. And obviously, I'm an outsider to these conversations, but it really does seem like, oh, I don't want to confront capitalism. I don't want to confront the issues of our society, and it almost sort of becomes like an idealism, sort of in a way, like an idealism and an escapism, where you can somehow get your liberation through self isolation. I mean,
I mean, it's like it's also self-defeating, and it's like with, women's separatism too, like, just, like, fuck men, basically, and, you know,
Yeah.
it's self-defeating because it's like, it's never it's not gonna happen, like, unfortunately, we're all stuck together in a society, and justice needs to be carried out and people need to be held to account, and that's hard, and there's no way around it. There's no way, even if you have clarity, even if you have a framework, there's no way around the fact that it's hard. and living out a fantasy of something that will never happen so that you don't do anything is not gonna help.
Yeah, like it's because like that's what I'm saying. Another liberal society, another liberal tactic. They want to be the arbitrators of what Black liberation looks like,
Mm.
and what it's presented as. You know,
Yeah. I think throughout this conversation we talked about this, but I kind of want to expand on it a little bit more. Like black people play this like dual role with the American society, where it's like also, first of all, they're the direction of all the hatred and the sort of like almost like a lightning rod of like all of America's class anger and hatred and everything. But there's also a fetishization of black culture
yeah,
and stealing of black culture where black people and even like the majority of like Gen Z slang or like slang words come from black culture, and they like suddenly the next thing you know, like a month or two later, it'll be being said by kids in suburbs, like based came from little B, like that he's the guy who came up with it. And now you got and for him like Lil B, it meant something like being your true self, being authentic. And now you got like kids on 4chan like saying based in terms of like Nazis, like, these suburban 4chan kids. What do you think this is? Like why is it both
um,
hated and also stolen?
I think that's what I'm saying. I was actually talking to this about as one of my mutuals. They're a Black trans woman, and talking to him about it. Basically, like when you have a colonizer, I've also talked about this with other people. When you have a colonizer, and when you have a type of system of exploitation, the colonizer is going to exploit everything that they can from you to strip your autonomy from you. So we have to strip your culture. We have to strip, like Black people have a history of being sexually abused. So we have to fetishize you. We have to fetishize your body. It's like almost a thing to where they said we weren't human, but we were just human enough to rape. We were just human enough to like actually like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so this is what makes the whole institution of slavery so fucking illogical. You had people enslaving their own fucking kids, like watching their kids get beat, watching their kids get tortured. Hold their whole life. Like a lot of these kids didn't know that the slave master was their father or the overseer. Most of the times it was actually the overseer who would rape the slaves because they would have more day-to-day contact. But and then you have a history of fetishization with Black men, with both white men and white women on the plantation of being sexually abused and subjugated, and you know what I'm saying? And this is where the myth, where the trope or the fallacy of like white women being endangered by the Black brute. You know what I'm saying? Where that trope comes in, because a lot of these white women will get caught being like fetishizing Black bodies and get caught by their husband or other white men, and basically say, "Oh, he forced himself on me. It was nothing I could do about it." And as a Black person, you don't have a say so, you don't have a word. So of course the white woman is going to be believed. You know what I'm saying? This is why the whole concept of white woman tears is so dangerous, because it's true. As many of Black men like Emmett Till that have been killed by, not even Black men, Black boys. I mean,
You know what I found crazy? Sorry to cut you off, but that was almost a one-to-one of October 7th and like how Hamas and Palestinians were portrayed towards Israeli women. I mean, it was an almost I was hearing this and it almost sounded like, it was almost like I was back during the times of Emmett Till or something like that, the way Israelis
yeah, they
were
have to
talking
make
about.
you a deviant.
Yeah.
They have to make you a deviant to justify what the fuck they're about to do to you. Because then, okay, we're getting killed. Why the fuck do we care if rapists are getting killed? You know what I'm saying? Like the Hamas was raping people. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that's literally what they do, is because that then why would I, you know what I'm saying, to an unsuspecting person, why would I care if there's a group of people like, yeah, get Hamas. You know what I'm saying? If the only type of framing that I've seen is Hamas is rapers, mass murderers, and fucking pillagers, yeah, these are fucking weird. These are weirdos who need to be exterminated. But you know what I'm saying? But they don't ever, and they will never tell you the whole story and the whole picture.
Yeah, like the classic example, like academically is always like blood libel, and the idea that, well, Jewish people like lost Germany World War I and they've been sacrificing all these kids and they've done this and that. And so, this total destruction of the group is the only reasonable reaction because they've done this, this, and that. Um, And, you can try to, like, manufacture consent, but I think it's getting a lot harder nowadays with the internet because there's so many channels of information, and, I mean, you can see, like, how the media has moved on so quickly from that story, about the embassy, because the idea that those 2 people who were murdered is equivalent to the genocide of Gaza, and that we should always hold one, you know, in our heads while talking about the other is just absurd to everyone. Everyone knows it's ridiculous. There's no, you know, equivalence there. Even if you say like, well, these are, even if they were completely innocent, random people with no connection to Israel, and no, just say this is cold-blooded, horrific, double homicide. Well, it's not, it doesn't compare to hundreds of thousands of people and children. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the, I do think it gets increasingly difficult though, because it really relies on your ability to control channels of information and, you know, what you're allowed to see. Like, a lot of people back in the day, they couldn't actually see the full extent of the violence, in Germany and, in Belgium, like during the Belgian Congo, like, they couldn't see it as closely. They weren't forced to rationalize it as much.
I will say though, there is like blind spots to this global visibility. Like I barely see any discussion on Congo or Sudan, and so I it's
The Inlar,
Myanmar is the spirit. So even if victims are able to record themselves or publish themselves or things like that, there still is um an inability. I think with Gaza specifically, we have such a direct connection to this where these other conflicts, there's a little bit of middlemen there where like it's almost impossible to ignore. Um and yeah, no, I mean I think like the way that Israeli society talks about Palestinians, it's a one-to-one in how white people talk about black people, or like historically used to talk about black people, still talk about black people today. I mean, it's so scary, you can see, going back to that original point that like anti-blackness is sort of like the global, the fixture of global oppression. It is so true. Um, in Indian society, the colorism, like there's so much anti-blackness within, our Indian society, and it's weird, the way that groups within America specifically are like fetishized and then also oppressed. Israeli society does the same exact thing. I think these are really two sister societies. Israel fetishizes Middle Eastern culture. It appropriates Middle Eastern culture just like America has appropriated black culture. It takes like falafel and hummus, and it says like this is Israeli, and then at the same time it wants to erase it. I've seen people say it like this. I forgot who said it. I think it was Gabor Mate. But basically, the way, or either that or Ian Pape, but basically the way that they do it is they project all of their society's evils onto this one group of people, right? This group of people is everything that's wrong with us. And so if we can sort of just cleanse them from the earth, then we cleanse ourselves, of all of our problems and all of our evils and all of our wrongs. Um, I think that's sort of how it is also in America. CJ, do you feel like racism, especially like after the Civil Rights Act, and as we're talking about the new Jim Crow, it's a lot harder to like tangibly um um sort of show people that exist, because nowadays, ever since the Civil Rights Act and the drug war, people can sort of just say no, like the policing system is equal. Even though study after study shows that it's disproportionate. Do you think we've sort of been American racism and American um uh suppression of black people has sort of been given a legal cover?
Yeah, it's racism in America. It's also how it's framed. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like racism is only framed as explicit hate, explicit, you know what I'm saying? Explicit excuse me, explicit just oppression. That's the only way that racism has been framed. So when you hear a liberal white person, when you tell a liberal white person, yeah, you have racist attitudes, you have racist beliefs, they be like, oh no, I'll never be racist. I can't be racist. I fight against racism because I believe we should all be equal. I believe I judge you off the content of your character. And it's like it's so many times where I interact with these people in real life and no, they still have biases. They still have They still have racism that they need to work through because more often than not, they think they've worked through all of it because they do have either familiar or social proximity to black people. So like I grew up around black people. How can I be racist?
Yeah.
I have black kids. I have black grandkids. You know what I'm saying? I had a white person tell me one time they know what it feels like to be black because they have black grandkids, so they understand how much it hurts. No, you understand how much you hurt because that is your grandchild. When you're going about this, that is literally that's a fucking microscope. That's a microcosm. That is literally like a one drop in a pin situation of you feeling like what it feels like to be black because you can just not be seen with your black grandchild ever again. The you know what I'm saying? As a black person, I always had to live as black. You have the privilege of being able to opt out of this, and I don't.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think to some extent it's yeah, even indigenous people. I mean, they've been sort of mythologized to be completely gone, and yet they show up as symbols of the American spirit. I mean, there's sort of a self-indigenization that white people do, where it's like, oh my god, this is the
Same thing with Israelis.
yeah, yeah, indigenous Israelis. I mean, this is a symbol of our culture. This is I wouldn't be surprised if Israel gets its way and like completely erases the Palestinians, which I don't think it will do, and God forbid, it's probably never going to happen, but God forbid it does. I wouldn't be surprised if 100 or 200 years from now, the Israelis have a football team called the Fighting Palestinians.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be past me. Or like they have like butters with like Palestinian faces on it, or like they're claiming like, oh yeah, I'm 1/50th Palestinian. Like white people do all the time, with indigenous people. What kind of connection do you think like the black community, indigenous community has? Because like we're sort of on two sides of the same coin, right? Oh, it's white settlers wanting to erase and take over the lands of indigenous people, and they wanted to enslave and keep black people there. Like fill that space as labor.
Yeah, so like the relation with black and indigenous people starts through Bartholomew de las Casas is a Spanish colonizer who basically was like, yeah, indigenous slavery is bad. I see them as humans. We need to go get these niggas from Africa. So basically what ended up happening was Europeans had started going this is like the 1500s. The Spanish were the first to bring Africans over in like the 1500s, and then you had the French, then you had the British. So it's like they were like, okay, these people from Africa aren't human now. We can use them as slaves because we now feel bad about what we did to the indigenous people here. So let's go over here. And also, a lot of indigenous people they knew how to run away, and they were also more resistant to diseases. They weren't as resistant to diseases as Africans because Africans have been in like either explicit or through like in passing contact with Europeans for centuries at this point through the Muslim world. So like we have more resistance to these European diseases. So after this, you start to see that a new culture starts to spring up in America's African American culture, and you see a lot of crossover or a lot of synchronization with indigenous African practices. I'll say that. So it's like we see the indigenous people of Africa and indigenous people of this land coming together to basically create solidarity from day one.
Yeah. I mean, Africa, especially a lot of the religions pre-colonialism, they were so similar to indigenous religions, right? These like very animism religions. I mean, there was a lot of shared I feel like there was a lot of shared culture and even sort of a shared story. Do you find what are your opinions on Pan-Africanism, the connection between African Americans and Africa? Like, is there a connection there? Is the African struggle in America connected to the African struggle in Africa, or is it like sort of a separate thing where like you can't really make a one to one or something like that?
Mm. It's in the name, African American. I swear, like I'll debate with conservatives in like 2021. They're like,
Yeah,
"You're not African." It's African comes. You see my Africanness before you see my Americanness. If that makes sense. Even though I'm not even American, I'm not considered American by the standards of what it means to be American. Most definitely, I'm a Pan-Africanist. Like Pan-Africanism is anti-imperialist. Like the father of Pan-Africanism is Du Bois. You got Du Bois, and then you got Garvey. Those are like Pan-Africanism is a freaking is his own whole nother can of worms that will take hours. So Du Bois basically says that like um whoever controls Africa controls the world. Why the fuck do you think Europe always wants its foot up Africa's ass? It's basically because like the European has never known a day without Africa. This is why they're so pissed at Ibrahim Traore for kicking them out because they don't. You can't do these things in fucking Africa. Like you can't mine these things in Europe. I mean, so like with Israel, what is Israel's largest export? Diamonds. Where the fuck is Israel getting diamonds from? Israel. Israel doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Or in Palestine, they're not naturally occurring. Where the fuck does Israel go? Israel goes to the Congo
Mhm.
with Dan Gertler that to exploit and to fucking mine for diamonds there. So that's what I'm saying. The African American struggle will always be linked to the African struggle because we're literally one and the same. We're literally descendants of the same. We have the same ancestors as these people. Like a lot of us have the like my uncle literally went back and got reinitiated into the tribe. Like you know what I'm saying? We're just lost tribesmen on the other side of the fucking world.
Oh,
It
nice.
is
Which
what it
tribe?
is. Fang
Oh, nice.
Fang from Gabon. And then I got Jola and I think I have yeah, I probably had to actually do a test. Fulani from like northwestern Africa. But yeah.
Nice. Um, well, one thing I think I find in a lot of your videos is you often say like we can't um do these sort of things where it's like, oh, this group is more oppressed than the other group, right? Why do you think that's like so important that like we don't like sort of play into I hate to say it because it is a conservative term, but like oppression Olympics, like where it's like I'm more deserving of help than you, like oh, um,
Um, it's because we need to acknowledge that white supremacy does this shit on purpose. We need to acknowledge that white supremacy manifests itself in different areas on purpose for us to be pointing fingers at each other rather than the problem, which is white supremacy. So it's like it normalizes white supremacy. It simplifies it into okay, more oppression here, more oppression there. No, it's just like a genocide, like the Palestinian genocide, Black genocide. There are points of acceleration and deceleration. You know what I'm saying? A point of acceleration for the Palestinian genocide will be October 7th, 2023. But the genocide's been going on since 1948, if you know what I'm saying. So like there are points of acceleration and deceleration with white supremacy. You're going to see more accelerated versions in certain spheres of the world because that is just how it is. You know what I'm saying? The needs of white supremacy are more explicit is because they either want it to be or they're trying to actively mine for some shit. So they need to cause destabilization. So you know what I'm saying? Like you saying, like Africa is way less explicit, is way less direct than Palestine. You know what I'm saying? They'll use groups like the RSF in Sudan, or you know what I'm saying? They'll use the middleman of the middleman to do what the fuck they want them to do. You know what I'm saying? So like in Sudan, it's a what's that shit called? It's the RSF, but the RSF is backed by the UAE, but the UAE is a fucking puppet state of America. So America's able to wash his hands because you got to go through two motherfuckers to get to the where the real money is, and through liberal media cycles is just they're just gonna stop at the RSF. They're not even gonna go to the UAE.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
even
Are
with
there,
the oh, no, go ahead, Henry.
I was gonna say though, the UAE is a absolutely just evil country though on its own. Like
Mhm.
it's especially you look at the Amhara region too. Um, and this Rwanda is another crazy case.
Mhm.
And I talked to actually someone who's Rwandan who supports Kagame and basically supports M23 invading DRC and all that
Oh
stuff. And
Lord.
I was just like, how can you just, it's just like horrible stuff. And he was like, look, we're just supposed to sit here and live in one of the poorest countries in the world after a massive, like, ethnic genocide. And when another country comes and says, hey, we'll help you enrich yourselves, go do this for us, or we're supposed to say no. And it's like, I mean, I would say morally, yes, you should say no. But to your point, like, yeah, the middleman, you know, is a very powerful and very like sinister mechanism of doing that sort of thing and creating some distance.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
yeah, they use the middleman or the middleman to do what they want to get done because you know what I'm saying. That's going to That's gonna wash their hands. It's gonna make them look more like more innocent. And then what they do is they go in and play savior. So that's exactly what they did with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was a fucking CIA operative. He literally was put in place by the CIA. You all can look it up as a verifiable fact. He was a CIA operative. They literally went it. Mhm.
So Saddam Hussein, he had like main character of the universe energy for a little while. Like he really thought he could like play America and for his own benefit. Like he was on some other shit. I feel like.
Yeah, so when he got outside the constraints of the program, they killed his ass. So, same thing with Bin Laden. Like, Bin Laden literally, his family has ties to the United States. Bin Laden was financed by the United States during the Soviet-Afghan War. It's literally the people that they find the group that Bin Laden had literally turned into Al-Qaeda, and then Al-Qaeda turned into ISIS. And then literally in Syria, the Pentagon and the CIA are funding two different sides of the shit. Like, they're literally in Syria, the United States is funding ISIS. But the way that they'll show it to you, and they also did it in Libya. They funded Al Qaeda in Syria. This is like,
Yeah, a lot of the money got to ISIS in Syria and Libya, though. Yeah.
yeah, because if you look it up, they'll be like, yeah, you really can't. I forgot what they said. They were like, yeah, while there may have been some funds that made their way to Al Qaeda, the United States government never directly funded it. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. They did turn around, like, they turned around and started attacking them, like, pretty quickly and tried to cover their tracks once it became clear, like, what Islamic State was, but yeah, they were like, "Whoever's gonna fight Assad, whatever, will give them money."
Yeah, they do it all the fucking time. Like, they literally do it all the time. Like, I remember during the 2010s, ISIS was the biggest threat to national security and was the biggest threat to, you know what I'm saying? The whole time the United States of America is funding ISIS. Like,
Yeah.
active.
Well, ISIS, like, the US needed ISIS because it was just, like, this evil force, is this,
Mhm.
like, thing that where we could say, "Yes, this is justified to use violence here." Although, I will say, it does frustrate me how a lot of the time people overlook the additional like class struggles within the global south because with very small countries like Qatar, Israel, like they're very, very reliant on the West. Like they're really colonial outposts. Even maybe Rwanda, you could throw Rwanda in there. But with countries like Nigeria, Brazil, Indonesia, like there's the West can't just go and, like, do whatever they want. Like, there is a lot of internal, class struggle there and, like, despotism that comes out of, like, the landowning classes and the bourgeoisie, the national bourgeoisie of the countries, like, and that really becomes, like, a problem in a lot of people's analysis, I think, because you just can't explain, like, the history of Nigeria, like, in the last 50 years. You can't explain it all if you don't think about the internal class struggle too?
Yeah, they're funding Al Shabaab. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, America funds literally every major terror organization in the global south and then tries to weaponize that and justify their invasion of said countries, and they turn on them.
Well, one thing I will say is like that's also what's so insidious about the media is like all it will give you is just a surface level, right? Like all they ever talk about was October 7th. They never talked about October 6th or October 5th or they never talked about
Mm,
the 48 years that led to this event. All they ever talked about was like 9/11. They never talked about how the dudes doing 9/11 were fucking funded by us. And it's really like
or they'll never tell you about Bin Laden's manifesto and the reason why he even wanted to do it in the first fucking place, which was because of Israel's incessant genocide on Palestinians. Like, that's the first reason that it's other reasons why he said it, but like literally that's the first reason why he said it.
yeah.
Well, to be
First.
fair though, it is also just, like, the most sympathetic, like, reason. Like, I do think he also knew other people would be reading that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think Bin Laden was that altruistic. He was from like a rich Saudi family. I mean, yeah. But
It was his wasn't even Palestinian liberation. It was more like in his manifesto, he's more preaching like Islamic, like pan-Islamic nationalism. Like, you're basically saying America staging a war on Muslims. And he's basically saying you're staging a war on Muslims in Palestine through Israel. So it's like that's why he was anti.
And just yeah, all over, yeah.
I find media from that time so fascinating, like South Park and shit, and like how they have like Saddam with the devil all the time, or I don't know. It's post 9/11 America was on some different energy.
Yeah, most definitely with the like the Islamophobia never left. That's why it's so easy for people to become Zionists. Because like now the image of just like that's why Palestinian militancy is seen as terrorism. Literally, if you show American like Muslim militant fighters with guns, they're gonna think terrorists now. Because that's what literally has been shown. And it's like when you actually fucking do the research, you realize that ISIS and fucking Hamas do not like each other whatsoever. Like they're actually like against each other. Like a lot of these militant organizations don't fuck with each other, even though they may be Muslim. Like, yeah, like they, they make Islam a monolith.
Hamas, like, they were so brutal to ISIS in Gaza, they unalived, like, all of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then even like Hamas has like pretty reasonable demands most of the time. It's just like give us a secular democracy without apartheid. Like that's nothing like ISIS. And even like the propaganda they'll use against Palestinians, it's like they throw gay people off of roofs. No, motherfucker, that's a story from, ISIS controlled parts of Syria and Iraq. Like nobody has ever been thrown off of a gay person never been thrown off a roof in Palestine, like ever.
or even or even, like ISIS itself, like, the fact that they were able to recruit so heavily in Syria and Iraq amongst the Sunni populations was just because the Sunni populations in those countries were completely brutalized by the Assad regime and by Saddam Hussein, and they had, like, this deep, deep grievance that they were able to prey on, and, they convinced them to do all kinds of, like, horrific stuff, but that aspect of it too is just never explored. It's just like, well, they just kinda spontaneously did
Yeah, like
bunch of the evil people decided to be evil again, you know?
and it's like they make it's like a fucking it's a Hegelian idealist worldview
Mhm.
that they do, that this bad people exist in a vacuum. Bad people are bad people that are always gonna exist, and we always just get like JD Vance was like, we need to go get the bad guys while talking about Palestine. Like, all right, bro, like this is not a Marvel flick film. And it's literally like the American propaganda machine makes you believe this is what we do when we go overseas. We're the superheroes, we're the saviors, we're the vanguards of democracy and goodwill in the world, and we're making sure that these places are enforcing the goodwill, but all the time you're exploiting it and destabilizing it so you can take control. And it's like, well, Hamas has offered peace deals multiple times and have gotten ignored. Like even got ignored or got denied.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, Israel could have had its hostages back on October 8th, as easily as
Yeah,
that.
they dropped him off on the border and Netanyahu said no.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I think they're definitely losing the narrative though, especially like nowadays. It's very hard. I mean, even I think I knew that the narrative is shifting because like last night I went out to dinner with like my Trump voting uncle, and like my his wife's non-political. She's my aunt. And even he was saying like, "Yeah, I hate Israel." And even she was saying like, "Yeah, I feel bad for the kids in Gaza." Like, oh my God, like this has reached the normies. Like
Yeah, this is yeah, most definitely. Like this has reached like my dad's age where like they know about it. Like they most definitely know about it. They most definitely know what's going on. That's what I'm saying. You can't facilitate a G-side based on lies in the 21st century because we have fucking phones now.
Yeah.
Like the people of Palestine, I know I talk to people in Palestine, they literally come on live and they're literally showing themselves in Palestine, or they'll show videos of them in Palestine. These are real people. These are these are not just numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and also the individualism of Western society is really interesting too, because it makes anti-status quo messaging actually really appealing,
Mhm.
as long as it's not too popular. So in
Yeah,
situations like this, yeah.
that's what happened with Malcolm X. Like he was his biopic, a lot of his radicalism was taken out because it was like the system allows you to critique it, but not to the point of where you're actually making progress. So you can critique the system. That's what makes black things like black liberalism appealing to people because black liberalism would acknowledge, yeah, it has been a lot of systemic harm, but just give us a seat at the table. You know what I'm saying? Like that's literally what they want you to do. They want you to critique the system. because the system capitalism allows critiques of itself, but it's not going to allow a critique that will dismantle it. It'll never platform a critique for its dismantling. That's why in the Malcolm X movie, you hear no mention of Palestine at all. You hear no mention of anti-capitalism. You hear no mention of any of this.
Yeah, he was just an interesting guy.
He was an interesting guy who was a little bit radical, but not too radical. Like don't cross
It
the
was
line.
thought-provoking. Yeah, he reminds us, like, about people with interesting ideas. Yeah.
Oh, you know what's so fucking thought provoking, and I almost forgot about it. But Sinners, that movie is
Mhm.
so fucking good,
I
bro.
haven't seen it.
You haven't
Sorry.
seen Sinners?
I know you told me I should have watched it before.
You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. CJ, what did you think the main message of Sinners was? Basically, like a plot synopsis, super quick plot synopsis. There's these two twins. They went to Chicago. They came back to the South. They're rich. They're gonna open up a nice bar. They buy it from a KKK member.
Okay.
And they're like throwing a nice party, and then this white vampire shows up, and slowly but surely, the vampires start taking over, and they gotta fight the vampires to survive. And then, spoiler alert, but like one of the twins becomes a vampire, and it's you just slowly see them like these guys get eaten up by the vampires. What do you think the vampires represented, CJ?
White commodification and exploitation of black art.
Mm.
Um, and like in the movie, like physically, like killing people. Like in the movie, if we're just talking about like from a horror perspective, yeah, they like the vampires were the villains of the movie. They were there. Like this is what made it interesting because white people who watch Sinners, a lot of white people, oh, I actually like the vampires. I thought they were cool. Like they actually think it's like a horror film.
Really?
Yeah, they really think it's a horror film.
That's
They really think it's a horror film, and it's like, yeah, I'm actually gonna take a class next semester. It's called Race and Horror, and it basically talks about how being black in America is living in a horror film. And I'm watching Sinners. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what it is like to be black. So yeah, they represent exploitation. And I think that the message of Sinners is that for black people, since we've had no real set liberation, liberation looks like different things to different people, or different black people. So for example, Stack's liberation was him being free to do what he wanted, being free to be with Mary in vampire land. Like since they're colorblind, this is his freedom. This is why in the movie he says this is why it's so important. He says in this world, in this society, we can't be together. Well, in this society, we can. And I did it on my own accord. I became a vampire on my own. I stayed a vampire on my own. I did this on my own terms. With Sammy is going and play music. He does this on his own terms. With Smoke, he ends up killing all the KKK members at the end, and he ends up dying on his. He could have easily saved him. He's a war veteran. He lets himself bleed out on purpose so he can die and go be with his family on the other side on the ancestral plane. That's his version of liberation. Going to be with his family again. And Stack's liberation is just being a vampire for all of eternity because he's able to live his truth. Sammy's is the same. He's able to live his truth. He's able to die doing music, something that he wanted to do.
I find that there's sort of two conceptions of freedom sort of showed, and they're both sort of shown to be flawed. I mean, there's sort of like a black capitalism road of freedom through the juke, and the party, and that's sort of presented as a sort of form of freedom. And for to a little extent, it is shown as like a liberatory, like genuinely liberatory, but not
Yeah,
like
capitalism at that time was radical as fuck.
you know. And then the other is like the vampire also promises freedom, right? Like the white vampire, like you will live forever and you can overcome death, but also you're under my control, right? Like that's it's such a yeah, yeah, I think there's such an underlying conception of like what is freedom, right? A discussion about what that means and like can you achieve it through capitalism? Can you achieve it through white capitalism? Or is there a different way to get free?
Socialism.
I think that's a good place to end it. CJ, thank you so much for coming on. Tell the people where they can find you, bro.
Most definitely. TikTok. All my handles on social media are the same. My TikTok, Instagram, all of that is the same. I am CJ underscore two. YouTube, all the same. Instagram, like I said. So yeah, most definitely that's where you can find me. Thanks, Poke and Cactus, for having me on. It's been an honor. I most definitely will want to come on again.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem.
Love to have you on again, bro. All right. Have a good one.
All right.
Very good.
Peace.
This episode of the Pokepreet Pod has been brought to you by our generous members on our Patreon. If you'd like to become one of them, go to patreon.com/thepokepreetpod. Thank you.
What the fuck? Glory to Stalin. I barely made it.